Hello, hello everyone, and welcome to the Black Commentary Show. We are here and ready to get you tuned in and get you to stay connected with us as we just look back um, on uh, another holiday that just passed recently. Um, we know that it was July 4th, and as I'm trying to just prepare myself for today's topic and message, which is a very important one. Um, I don't know how to best address it. Let me make sure I got sound.
Topic and message.
Okay, and I do got sound. So we are live. Yeah, but I don't know how to best address this. I don't know how to best come at this topic. Is it is as it is a very important one. Um, and shout out to those who has been supporting the Black Commentary podcast, and I appreciate the shares that you give. So the topic today, let me get one more share in, and then I'll tell you. um, so those who are listening back, um, I know you like just get to the point and stop the banter. I know I'm trying to get there. So the topic of the day, though, is when will Black America gain back their true independence? Like I said, I know that we just celebrated July 4th, and July 4th is in celebration to the 1776 event that happened when America finally was able uh, to issue their Declaration of Independence by the Continental Congress on the fourth. You know, uh, it was 13 American colonies, and they wanted to get rid of their political connections to Great Britain, and the whole motivation was independence. To be a free country, to do what they want, so to make their own money, to not be tied to Great Britain and their rule and what what they say, and and so centuries later, right? We're here. But before I get into centuries later, where we're here, if we fast forward just to 1863, right? You know, African American slaves were were freed, quote unquote, and I use quotes. Okay, and I'll tell you why I'm using quotes today in a second. So January 1863, Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation freed enslaved in the Confederate held territory only. Okay, only. Keyword only. So black men were officially, admitted to serve in the Union Army, and U.S. colored troops were organized. So there was still a catch there, and many people don't understand this. Me being someone who have served in the military, I know when you sign your line on your name on that dotted line, you belong to the government, which is it's kind of ironic, right? But if we look at this, if that January 1863 event was really for Confederate held territory only, but the argument is that, like, most Union held territories, you were so-called free. But when we look at what's happening in today's environment, and if we look around, if we look around the country and some of the most worst areas of Black America, you see that there's obviously a very, very huge bad wealth gap. There's no independence. Who's independent? There's a lot of dependence rather than independence in Black America, uh, on uh, on this American government. So there's a lot of close knit ties for political reliance. We don't have the ability to just stick our middle finger, in theory, to political powers. We in fact do need them. If there is this huge wealth gap where we cannot do it ourselves, where we cannot pull ourselves up and get the job done, so to speak. What do we have? We have nothing. But let's look into why we have nothing, right? So I told you, 1863, that big event, but during that time, what was going on? The Civil War. Okay, Civil War. We hear stories, about the different successes of Black Americans, going against the barriers all the time, especially during Black History Month, and then we just had our new official holiday, right? Juneteenth. Ooh, okay, but yet and still, there's this nagging fact that the median net wealth of the white household is 12.2 times greater than that of Black households. And it's well documented that unemployment rates, earnings, poverty, and wealth of Black working people are sometimes falsely seen as being that of like bystanders in this American economy, but that's not the case. Okay, we are further, you know, um, away from what people see us as, and the true reality of it is, and clear economic reality is, there's a lack of investment in education, skills, training, and personal saving. Oh, that big one, saving. But yeah, we could, it's very easy, and like even myself would say, personal responsibility, personal accountability is so important, so crucial. Yes, I agree, but there's something underlying there, and good old Dr. Martin Luther King, when he was assassinated, he was actually assassinated during a campaign by Black sanitation workers in Memphis to exercise their right to organize, strike, and demand fair wages. Okay, why would that be? Why would that be a thing? There's a lot of people now that that are demanding fair wages. They want the American worker advancement to happen, but this was happened specifically for Black workers, to demand a livable wage. But obviously, they kept getting the middle finger, and we're seeing that now, where if you ask for something, if you ask for a little bit more on the job, or if you ask for a little bit more in the government, you get the middle finger. You don't get it. But why is that? It goes back to the whole wealth gap. Without money, there's no power. Obviously, you can do all the that's why the protesting now is so ineffective, because there's no money behind it. And the further the wealth gap continues to spread, between the Black American population and their peers, what power do we have other than the vote? So that there it goes. That goes back to my argument. We're so in bed with politics, we have no choice but to be dependent. There's no independence. There's no independence in the black. There was never no true independence in Black America. We we're not free. How are we free if we're so dependent? on this government, on politics, on political powers. We got to entrust people in these political positions to get the job done for us, because we obviously don't have any resources. And when we put these people in positions, they do nothing. They do obviously nothing for us. Do nothing. Not a doggone thing. They leave us out hanging dry. Lack of investment in education, in our housing, in what else did I say? Skills, the training, and financial savviness, how to save. But that saving is so big here, the saving is so crucial. That the whole financial thing is so crucial in all of this, and it's going to be a huge, big part of why I'm talking today. Now, during the Civil War, so going back to the Civil War, right? A lot of African American leaders, mostly, Frederick Douglass, he was really going hard for black soldiers to be officially sworn in so that they can help fight to end slavery. Now, a lot of people might say, well, okay, well, he was doing that, because he was obviously on a mission to end slavery. So what do we know, though, about being in the military, right? What do we know? What do I know as someone who served in the military? Here's a little secret. Here's another little caveat about why Mr. Douglass and why someone like myself who grew up in the hood and knew that I didn't have no trust fund waiting for me, that I didn't have nothing, nobody was about to pay for my college. Nobody was about to, be able to like lend to me to get a house. None of that, here's what I knew. And here's what Mr. Douglass knew back during the Civil War time. He knew that if he was able to get black soldiers officially sworn in, that, all 180,000 of those men that joined the U.S. Army and the Navy to go against the revolt will also become the largest paid workforce of African American man to the point to that point in American history. Ooh, don't figure, right? So that was actually the first largest paid workforce for African Americans during that time in history. And this is where I wised up at as a 17-year-old, because I knew, man, listen, I'm gonna need a way to pay for college. I'm gonna need some income. I'm gonna need some medical insurance. I'm gonna need something. Who's gonna give it to me? Only place I could turn to was the military. I couldn't turn nowhere else. Sure, I could have, continue to work for my dad, but at the time, me and my dad's relationship wasn't that good. But instead I said, look, I'm going to join the military where I'm guaranteed something. And so Mr. Douglass at the time identified just that. And boy, was he right. And the issue quickly arose as to where, we getting all of these soldiers, 180,000 black soldiers. They getting paid now. They getting money, man. So where are they going to deposit their checks? Especially if they live down south. So where can they put their checks at? They came up with an idea. They said, how about this? We're going to start banks specifically for these soldiers so that they can deposit their checks, the checks that they're getting, for, working as a soldier. The occupation is soldier, working, and even if these soldiers passed on, there was money, insurance on their heads that was going to be deposited in those checks. That who gets those paychecks? Who you think get that money in those accounts? Beneficiaries. Yeah. So, but they needed a bank though. So what they did, they established the Freedmen's Savings and Trust by the Congressional Act in March 1865. Now, everybody's looking at January as that pivotal point, but 1865 was even sweeter because that was the first time a bank was established just for blacks alone, by the government and backed by the government. It was a congressional act to establish this Freedmen's Savings and Trust. And sure enough, uh, it was up until somewhere recently, that they finally years later, but why was this not even publicized? Why is this not even talked about now? Even with all this talk about reparations, right? We hear so much about reparations, but we don't talk about this Freedmen's Savings and Trust that was created in 1865. This is history that's kind of tipped on, and we don't talk about these 180,000 black soldiers, that became the largest paid workforce in the history of America, that had income, that was money just growing. So here's why. Okay, so like I said, it wasn't recently, so the U.S. Department of Treasury dedicated an annex to honor the Freedmen's Bureau rank. So there is an annex to actually honor. So you can go to the Department of Treasury right now and look this up if you want to. Look this up. You can Google it, whatever. So it wasn't until recently though. No, but here's what happened though. Here's the betrayal that happened. Okay, so around 1870. The bank had about 37 branches around the South, with they even had, African Americans working as branch managers, but I'm wondering how, if these banks were created specifically for blacks, why you didn't allow any blacks to own these banks? You had black money going into these banks, so you had about 70,000 African American making deposits in these banks, and the savings reached about $57 million. So that's a lot of money if you convert it into, you take into cost of living and all of that, and inflation, and that's a lot of dollars in today's economy right now. 57 million compared to 2021, you're probably looking at a couple billion. That's probably about $1 billion or so. But even those who were still subject to slavery, were able, allowed to even at some point, once they found out they were free, they took what they were given, or what they had, and were able to start these accounts. And this was supposed to be new wealth. This was supposed to be a new wealth for black people. But bull, you can finish the rest will kick in. This is what happened, right? Let me tell y'all what happened. You want to know what happened? Let me tell you what happened. So there was so many uncertainties going on, right? Especially with the Civil War, but at the start of the 70s, they had this whole Homestead Act and Transcontinental Railroad that happened, and it was supposed to restore the nation's prosperity and financial zeal, but so much of that was speculation in the railroading. But then you had all these financial pressures coming on that was going on in Europe. There was a bunch of stuff going on in Europe, especially with these silver coins. And so what happened is they all these silver coins are going out. They end up pummeling the silver prices. And then what happened, it led the U.S. to go from backing its currency in silver and gold to only the gold standard, to use only the gold standard. And this led to a collapse in investments in the silver mines in the West, in the western part of the U.S. So it was a total global financial collapse. It swept the U.S. and Europe in 1873, which came to the collapse of the U.S. banking system too. So if it was collapsing the banking system, what do you think happened to the freedman's banking system? The freedman's, that freedman bureau bank, that freedman saving the trust bank that was supposedly backed by the federal government. it collapsed too. That sound familiar, right? And this is where we learn about the Great Depression, where a lot of depositors lost their savings, but they do not talk about so many of those black people that were building wealth in this account, in these accounts, that lost their money. So much we talk about the Great Depression, but that was a huge depression for the African American community. That's when it started. That's when this huge wealth gap started. And everybody else was able to build back up. Everybody else, was able to build their community back up. But the African American community never returned. There was no bailout. There was no bailout ever. But you get so many of these banks, that, like, especially back in 2007, after the financial collapse in 2007, like getting bailouts, even with this COVID thing, where they handing out checks like candy. But like you skipping over skipping over a huge chunk of history, and even in 1876, where there was this huge promise to resolve, the whole situation through a presidential election, but it never happened. Instead, you had voter rights, that was being suppressed. So many people were like trying, some of the whites down south were like trying to like strip African Americans of their ability to like get equal access to education, which is still going on today. Like, when people talk about like no school choice and all this stuff, what? I just want to send my kid to a great school, because obviously you won't invest in the schools here. So same stuff going on here. But like I said, huge argument here is that, like, we got a huge chunk of history that's being skipped over and people are not looking at, and we've been betrayed. And there has never been, and still not, any true independence in Black America, because we are so far reliant and dependent on this government to do it for us, to help us, to save us. And the fact of the matter is, history keeps getting suppressed. History keeps getting like, kind of, they keep trying to hide history and make you look the other way, make you look at, things that's going on now. And, and then we're killing each other, over pettiness, and not trying to awake to, what's really going on and what has happened. So we got a real sad situation. And I think that we need to have our own 1776 Black America at some point, where we need to say, look, we're sick of this government. Either you give us what you owe us, or we need to separate. We need to find a way to separate from you, politically. Like, we need to politically separate from you, and be independent. Be independent and like do it ourselves, because like obviously relying on you to do it for us, and and you not giving us what we owed, what you took from us, what you caused to be took from us, or you didn't give it back after it was lost. You gave everybody back theirs, but not us. We need to be walking away from you. So, hey, that's my rant for today. This is a rant. This coming as a rant. A lot of the resources, a lot of the education that I got from this, can be backed by looking at some. You can go look at the AFLCCIO.org website. There's a article on there about it. There's an article in the Washington Post that you can go look at. But we got a bad we got a situation on our hand, folks. You know, and until we become either A, financially literate, B, create wealth in the Black community, C, become more educated, and D, separate politically from these political dummies and this political government that is not for us. We're never going to be coming up on top, or never going to get out of this hole that we all are in. It's going to be just continuous cycle of the same old, and getting worse by each generation. So that's all I have for you. Until next time, stay Black, be wise. Many blessings, peace, and lots of love.